It's green. Yep. All right. Anyway, those would be not unlike some of the straightened out instruments that you would have found in early France and actually in some other parts of the world. But let's move along here with our sort of semi-natural materials. We have these two really long things. You know, if you're a horn player, if you're a musician, period, you're going to collect a lot of stuff. And anybody who is a spouse, how many spouses of musicians do we have in here? Do you have a lot of stuff in your house that's musical? And to a person they will say, and you truck a lot of these things. But ultimately you're so interested in what either the history is or where it's going. So these are Alp horns. The short one here, which actually has a Swiss cross on it, you know, their emblem, was purchased from a person who had bought it in Switzerland. And it's a kind of a shortened up version of it. It's basically in the key of A flat. This long thing is fiberglass, and it's kind of lumpy in the middle. And if you don't get it together, the tape doesn't mean anything too much here. It just is to keep the raffia on. But it's fiberglass. It's lumpy because it was one of the first that was made, and it's sort of irregular. So it's in F, and Terry's agreed to play it, and she should be able to produce the you can try for the low one? Okay, she should produce the fundamental that is fundamental to the F horn. So let's go with the low one here. Yeah, try one up there. Just okay. Now what she's discovered, and still a principle of brass instruments basically, but especially of the horn, the length and all, when you get up to a certain point in the harmonic series and the notes become closer together, that's where this has to be very smart. And it senses how distant those nodes are, basically. So I'm going to ask Terry if she can go a little bit higher and see if we can orally get an idea of what's going to happen up higher. Yeah, just kind of smear it up there. Just, can you... You can hear them breezing by. Right. I can tell you that out in the mountains, and especially if you have a brook and you place this toward an escarpment, it will give you 5 notes back. It's wonderful. It's really quite an experience. Anyway, the Brahms Second Symphony uses this instrument, or can use it. Here we go, Eric. Let's see what kind of animal that is, basically. That is the most reflective sound, and it just stirs my soul. I don't know about yours, but I really like it. And if you are in Switzerland, you will hear these items or these instruments. There are makers of Alp horns, and there's a fellow in Colorado that makes them that is the best known. The horn that Eric played on has a cupped mouthpiece. It's actually built for the instrument made of wood. The one that Terry played on is an adapter, has a wooden adapter, and then a modern horn mouthpiece can be fitted into it. Okay, moving along here, we have these shiny things sitting up here, so we're kind of getting more modern, I bet you can tell. We'll try to move this along, by the way. So whoever were the volunteers, if they will step forward again with these 2 hand horns, basically. you bring your mouthpiece? Yeah. Okay, let me carry on here a bit. In order to, as a retired or as a school teacher, an instrumental music teacher, you're just dragging up all this stuff. So I had a maker take the valves off of 2 single F horns. So they are an F. The early school horns usually came with an E flat slide, what they call a single horn would come with both an F and an E flat slide. Sometimes they came with a D horn, and that's an absolute outgrowth of the history of the horn. Once again, these are altered single F horns. So where the valve assembly would have been has been taken out and actually made the horns more stable. Rather than put them on the brass pile, then they became usable. So now we're talking about something that's really important in the history of the horn. We're talking about winding the horn up. It was wound up a little bit before that. We're talking, late 1600s, 1700s, this really begins to take hold. And now the player can hold the horn and not carry around this long event here. And the first go-around with it, they were hunting horns. Some were a larger loop hung over the shoulder. I don't own one of those yet. So if we can demonstrate what likely would be a hunting horn position and the horn up, just really out there in the woods. Can you blow that thing and just be rotating? Yeah. You have an offering? No. Let's see if they can. Let's see if they can match pitches, and they'll both put them up like a la hunting style. In the French theater, theater people would do this. They'd see, hey, we ought to put these things in our stage play here, so they'd have hunting horns off to the side. Well, eventually, and I think it's attributed to somebody in Germany, they thought, maybe we could turn the horn down and put our hand in the bell. And that's the great mystery of the horn. Why do you have your hand in the bell? These, once again, are altered modern horns. The early hunting horn and the early hand horn, or one that was actually made for concert purposes, has a much smaller diameter bell, and they were quite ornate. They were painted. Beautiful things. There's an extant collection of them. We talked about this the other day. It's in Europe now. It used to be in Pennsylvania, and a wonderful member of the International Horn Society owned them all. He would let us play them. It was really exciting. So here we're talking about what's going to become a primary event in the history of the horn. We're going to turn the horn down. We're going to put the hand in the bell. And we're going to socialize ourselves into the orchestra. So I think you can demonstrate the technique of hand stopping. It's attributed to one Anton Hampel.
Okay. To get a whole scale on this horn, I put my hand in and change a couple pitches.
So once again, somewhere inside of us, there's a great desire to make music. And the string players, you can slip up and down the string. Even rocks have a different sound from time to time. But here somebody had a straight instrument. You had some different notes on it, but not necessarily the chromatic version or the scale version that you needed or that the composer needed. So hand horn style comes into the 1700s. Mozart wrote for hand horn. Beethoven wrote for hand horns or natural horns, and they evolved a system of crooks. I explained earlier about the F and the E flat and the D slide. And so the crook system underwent, they had standard crooks that were used for horns in the orchestra. And those were the keys that were the most stable: D, E flat, E, F, and G. B flat basso, and C crook, sometimes you'll see. There are modern hand horn makers. They make modern horns. One is at Indiana University, and he will do core solos or core orchestre. And the fitting of the crooks is slightly different. What happens if you change crooks really often, these assembly points wear out, the crooks become loose, and the horn leaks, and then the composer is justified to say, those are really out of tune. I really don't want to hear those instruments. We had on stage here, I guess you can set those down for, we had on stage here, thank you. Thanks for your help. If those who are holding their horns, if they would hold them up, almost to a person, these are double horns. So there's an F slide an F side we talked about, and then an added B flat side, so that it adds range and stability just with the flick of a trigger, which is just wonderful. We even have on the premises a triple horn. That's been kind of a really modern invention. If you can turn it, Lauren, so they can see the actual 3 tiers, if you will. And how many triggers does it take to make that run?
I have 5, but you can get one with 6.
So we know that they're playing with valves, and it extends the literature, it extends our imaginations, and what comes first, one doesn't know. Thank heavens there are people out there who will make horns, who will tinker with horns, and that there are great players out there. There's just a tremendous history here that I'm absolutely bypassing. Get on the internet, punch up horn, see what you find. But one thing leads to another, and it's within us. It's this artistic thing that we respond to that I think makes these wonderful inventions or whatever. I will say, at the end of this whatever lecture, number one, I have a chart over there. You might enjoy looking at that, and it shows the progression of horns and their development to sort of today. Things have gone beyond. In this day and age, and due to the society, which is international, the hand horn has come back in great numbers. There are hand horn groups. There are groups of hunting horns. There's a whole system of hunting calls. They're very musical, not unlike the nobles of yore, especially in France. They had their own cadre of horn players who would stand in the courtyard and reproduce the hunting calls that they did. So we have the hand horn making its way back. There's been much literature found. The Alp horn is making a big statement hither and yon. There are people who are, there's a Joseph Molnar, if you ever hear his name. There's music written for the Alp horn. So almost all aspects of the horn are in use today, which I find it a great tribute to its history. Thank you very much. Thank you, people.